that in mind. A lot of this is going to be kind of essentially we're going to be going over a constraint setup for a very specific type of situation. And I'll also give tips on how to expand it. So what's the situation we're in right now? The situation we're in is we need to have a character balancing on a board that is also balancing on a cylinder. So we've got a cylinder here. Let's scale this up, make it a little longer. And then I'm going to create a board. So a polygon cube. Something like this. That sits on top here. Now, you got your character on here. They're balancing on this cylinder that's balanced on they're balanced on the board that's balanced on the cylinder. And as this is happening, the cylinder has to roll back and forth while the board slides back and forth while also tipping on this thing. That's going to be fun. Can you imagine trying to animate that just by hand? And trying to roll this over, and then this has to tip, and then that's not sticking anymore. Let's move that. Oh, now sticking through the ground. Already, frustration kicks in. This is going to be a pain to do. To just try and brute force it. You could, but it's going to be a pain. So, how can we set this up? Ideally, we're going to have some sort of constraint set up here. Now, let me set this up. I'm just going to add a ground plane. Now, one thing I'm also going to do is I'm going to take my cylinder here and actually we'll just leave it like this for now. Because I'm going to use that for a demo later on. So let's create another polygon plane right here. And just make sure that it's sitting on the ground. Okay. So, in terms of the cylinder, this is pretty easy. It just goes back and forth. And let's start naming our objects. So this is going to be, we'll call this roller. And then this is going to be the board. And then we've got our ground right there. Okay. So, how do we set this up? Well, there's a few different things that we would need to do. The first thing is that we need to be able to have these objects linked together so that as we move the roller, the board goes with it because it is going to be attached in some way. It's going to follow along. But we need to be able to retain the ability to move the board side to side on top of the roller. And we also need a way to have the pivot point stay over top of the center of the roller here. We can't have that pivot point be over here because now that ruins everything. So how do we do that? And let's see, Tara, by the way, change of plans in return to AM. My next project got moved up to April instead of June, so I'll be focusing on that. Oh, that's cool. Let's see, April instead of June. Okay, cool. So you'll be working on it sooner. That's awesome. Well, congrats on that. That's really cool. Whenever you get back to AM, just I'll wait for the day. So with this, I can't unhear pork now. So we've got this. How do we set this up? Well, let's think this through. Essentially, I need to have something that controls the board. The board needs to be constrained to the roller. Now, as anyone who's been in my streams before knows, we can't do a straight constraint. If we do a straight constraint, that's not going to help. It needs to just follow side to side, and we need to have individual controls. So a locator is going to be very useful here. Now, if we just add one locator, that doesn't really solve anything, because as I use this, and let's say we'll do a simple constraint setup. We'll constrain the locator to the roller, and then we're going to, parent the locator to the roller here, and then constrain the board to the locator. So constrain parent, Hey, it moves along. Great. If I roll it, that's not what I want. I don't want to have the board follow along like this. It needs to have individual control because someone's balancing on top of this. It's not glued on this board. This doesn't work, especially since if I keep rolling this, now I'm going to have to try and counter animate this, and it's going to be a nightmare. It's going to be a pain. So what I need to do is I need to split the rotations away from the translations. I need two separate controls that will allow me to just have the board follow the roller, and another that lets me tilt the roller at a specific pivot point. So let's set that up. Essentially, we'll need two locators. We'll need one locator set up right on top of the roller here. So this is going to be my tilt. My tilt locator. And then I'm going to need another locator. And this one, honestly, the position doesn't need to be too specific. And this is going to be my left-right locator. So this is going to be the one that just allows me to adjust the board left to right. Okay. So we've got a tilt and we've got a left to right. Essentially, what we want is as this moves side to side, the locator should follow along with that, but it should not rotate with this right here. So if I rotate this, the locator, it should just slide along with. The other thing we need to do is make sure that the tilt always stays at the top of the roller here. So how can we do this? Actually, there's one other thing. We need to make sure that as the board tilts, it still slides not like this, but along the roller, like so. So we've got a lot of different criteria here. How do we set this up? So the big thing is we've got all the information we need here. We just need to know what order to put it in. We know that the roller is going to lead. That's the most important thing. The board is going to be the last thing. This is going to be the thing that follows everything else. So we've got our two ends. Roller, start, board, the end. How do we set up the middle? Well, I know that the left and right, so this is going to be the sliding of the board here, is going to control this motion. That needs to follow the tilt of the board. So if the board is tilted this way, it needs to be able to slide that way, which means that the left-right should follow the tilt control. So I'm going to take my left-right locator and parent it to the tilt control right there. That way, as I rotate this, you can see that the left-right gets adjusted as well, like so. So we get that. Now we can see, I'm just trying to think here. I think my pivot point needs to be moved. I think this is going to be a little too low. I need to bring this up to the top here so we just get that rotation in there, like so. Okay, so we've got this in place. Now we know that the board needs to follow the tilt locator. That's pretty much pretty simple. I can just do a straight constraint to it. So I can take my locator here, take my board, constrain parent. That means that as I animate this, the board goes with. Perfect. And as I slide back and forth, it all follows along. Great. So now I can tilt this here. And if I slide this, aha, look at that. We've already got our rotation at our animatable pivot point. I can animate it like that. Go woo, over here. Tip it back up. Whee! I need a slide whistle for this. There you go. We've got our pivot point that stays on top of the cylinder, and the board can just slide along the top. Great. Okay, let me undo. There we go. Now, we need all of this to follow the roller. How do we do that? Well, I can't parent this because if I just parent the locator to the roller, we have the original issue we had, which was that, sure, it moves along, but if I rotate it, it tilts. If we do a parent constraint, we're going to get a similar issue. So we just need to change our constraint. I'm going to take this locator and I'm going to, I could add a group to this so that I don't constrain the exact locator. In this case, it doesn't really matter. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the cylinder and parent the locator to it, or sorry, constrain the locator to it. But instead of using a parent constraint, I'm going to use a point constraint. A point constraint is a constraint that only constrains the translations, which means that as I move this cylinder around, it follows along now. But if I rotate the cylinder, nothing happens because none of the rotations have been affected. So now I can roll this roller around, have it roll across the floor, right across here, roll it, no problem. And this now allows me to tilt this still, and then animate this going, make sure I'm in object mode here, side to side. Done. So I just created a simple hierarchy right there and used two locators and essentially split the rotations and the translations, so I have individual control on each one, and I essentially have a movable pivot point right there. Now I can just constrain my character's feet onto this board. Done. Just polish my animation. It's just going to be a few simple curves. I don't have to worry about translating the board up and down and trying to keep it on the cylinder and all of that crazy stuff there. So that's pretty much it. We've got a nice simple setup that we could expand if we wanted to. We could add even more control and like extra pivots and whatnot and offsets. But at its most basic, this is all we need.